Where do you see God at work, transforming and renewing your congregation and our lives by the good news of Jesus? That's the question I invite us to deeply ponder together. In Romans 12, Paul writes, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that you will know what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." If ever there was a time that we need renewal and transformation in our lives and in our congregations and our communities, this is the time that I think God is asking us to step out in faith and be the bold witnesses to the love of God and reconciling love in Jesus Christ. Why do I say that? In the J.B. Phillips translation of this verse, it says, "Do not let the world squeeze you into its mold." See, the world is always trying to define who we are, how we should act, what it means to live today. And the world tells us it's how much you make, what your IQ is, what your college you graduated from, what's the color of your skin, how much you can consume and buy and own and sell. That defines who you are. But the gospel, based on God's love in Jesus Christ, our baptismal identity says we are new creations in Christ. God was in Christ reconciling the world and giving us a ministry of reconciliation. God is always seeking to change us and renew us from the inside out. Throughout this video, you're going to hear one story after another of where God's transforming and renewing love in Jesus Christ is being shared throughout our Synod. At our 2015 assembly, we adopted a resolution calling for Lutherans across our state and for every congregation to form partnerships with our public schools. The stories you are about to hear are some of the ways we're trying to live into this resolution, where we share the love of God in Jesus Christ by helping children around our state to have their lives transformed and renewed so they can live out their God-given potential.
We chose the theme, "For the Sake of Children," in support of the South Carolina Synod Assembly resolution, which they passed on public education, and the South Carolina Women of the ELCA Convention voting delegates also passed a resolution on public education.
Under the watchful eye of God, we partnered with the State Board of Education, and they guided us and gave us direction on what they needed, and they also gave us a list of books that they needed. At our convention this year in 2016, we gathered 5,598 books, and we also gathered another $5,635 in funds to buy additional books.
In January of 2016, the Public Education Task Force had a survey sent to all the congregations in the Synod. And the survey had to do with questions about how they were involved or wanted to be involved in partnering with public schools in their communities. 1 in 3 of the congregations that responded said that they were going to start a new ministry that had them involved with public schools in their community in the coming year. Imagine if we did that every single year, the number of congregations that we would have actively involved in helping children in public schools in their community.
One highlight of our Synod Assembly came in our Friday evening worship service. Presiding Elder Norvell Goff preached an incredible sermon about God's transforming love through the power of forgiveness.
But when we forgive, God brings about a transformation of our minds. Things that we used to do, we just don't do it anymore. Somebody say amen.
We also received onto our roster Pastor Leroy Cannon as our first Lutheran pastor from the AME tradition.
In the aftermath of the Emmanuel AME shooting, we gathered in our congregation for a worship service of remembrance. And one very insightful member of our congregation shared that reconciliation wasn't something we should be talking about, but reconciliation is something that we are called to do with others.
It's just great to see the people coming together in a time when folks are trying to separate and divide. You see the people in Northeast Columbia between the coalition of churches coming together, all different denominations, different races, but we all serve the same God. And you see God really uniting that community, not just those churches, but also even others in the community who can feel the energy.
There are 7 churches on Scrabble Rd, and we all worship differently on Sunday mornings. But when we all come together and worship the one God, it is transforming.
One of the things that our cluster did was to gather together and watch the movie Selma, which is an important part of, I think, not only African American history, but American history. And what it did was it allowed us to begin a dialogue around tough conversations. It allowed us to look at it from multiple perspectives. One of the things that I thought was really challenging was as Martin Luther King was faced with what he should do, and we talked about him kneeling on the bridge and praying in the midst. It reminded, I think, each one of us as we come together as a cluster to lead this community to what we believe is a better understanding of what God would call us to do, that every step of the way we got to kneel and pray and stop too.
People that attend these events walk away with the question of, I understand what happened then, but what can I do now to bring us closer together in racial reconciliation, to bring us closer together as a people, to bring us closer together reconciled back unto Christ. So when we leave the Selma event, we leave there renewed, we leave there with restoration, and we leave there with hope, because we know now God's plan and His purpose, and by watching the movie it brings us in close proximity to where He wants us to be as a people in this world today.
I love the story when Jesus talks about a mustard seed, because Jesus makes it clear that wonderful, great ministry can happen in small, out-of-the-way places. The next 2 stories are going to be about Good Shepherd Walterboro and a ministry they have with children in their neighborhood, and Gethsemane and Sagrada Familia, and a partnership that is blessing and strengthening both Latinos and this congregation as well. Small congregations doing great things.
About 4 years ago, we were not having any real good attendance on Sunday mornings at 9 o'clock for Sunday school. And so over that summer, we decided to have some discussion about what can we do about this. Of course, the first question was, well, does it have to be on Sunday? And we quickly decided that no, it doesn't have to be on Sunday. And we decided on Wednesday afternoons.
I would come in to teach Sunday school and I would have my children. And that was it, 2 kids. At moments it was kind of frustrating, you know, and then when we got together and put our heads together and came up with the plan of Wonderful Wednesday, you know, everybody got really excited about it.
Over the period of time, these same people who only brought their own children, their own grandchildren, their own nieces and nephews to the program, now look upon the children from across the street, around the corner, in the general community itself as their new children. And this program and this opportunity we call Wonderful Wednesday has made all that happen.
I believe that some of the ways that partnering with Sagrada Familia has really helped our congregation sort of fulfilling a dream that they believe is important as disciples of Christ, is to be inclusive, to be accepting of others, to care for others. And by partnering with Sagrada Familia was sort of a way of not just talking about being a disciple and trying to follow Jesus' guidance into loving and accepting others, but actually going out and doing something about it.
You need to know from where comes our congregation. Most of them had their own exodus. Some of them crossed the desert running away of violence or wars or poverty. They came here to the United States looking for new opportunities. When they arrived, they were part of those that are rejected, are discarded, are oppressed. And then, through the Word, they find that liberating message, that message of the Lord that gives them hope, that permit again to dream, to live in freedom, knowing that through His grace, through the faith, they will receive salvation.
Thank you for all the ways that your congregation is sharing the love of Jesus Christ in your community. And thank you for your mission support, that portion of your offering that goes to support the South Carolina Synod and our church-wide, because you have seen in this video the power and impact that your offerings are making in the lives of others, both here in South Carolina and around the world as well. As a young pastor, one of the things I learned early in my ministry was the importance of tithing, both as a personal spiritual discipline and as something to teach and stress among my congregation. There were times when it was difficult for Cindy and I with 3 small children to make our tithe, but we found as we paid that first and forward, God always provided for our needs. I would like to challenge every congregation in the South Carolina Synod to designate 10% of the offerings regularly given by their members for the mission support for the South Carolina Synod and our church-wide. Another option that could help congregations take a step towards tithing is to increase what you gave last year to mission support by 10%. In this way, you also are practicing tithing and moving in that direction. And you're helping us continue to bless and transform and renew lives through our partnerships all across the Synod and the ELCA. Thank you for sharing in these stories of transforming and reconciling relationships, and may they help you recognize more clearly the many ways that God is at work in your midst.